What if I told you there is one particular disease in the entire world which is so deadly that even one person who survived this disease in the very recent 2024 June became the 11th person worldwide who has survived from this particular disease? Welcome back to Will Believers IAS Academy. This is Madan Gopal, and in this today's particular video, we will be discussing about that particular disease, which is also called as the brain-eating disease, or also famously called as the primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. Right? So, why is it in news? Because of the present relevance or present prevalence of this particular disease in the Kerala, especially the Kozhikode district, which rose by the number of cases recently after reporting 3 consecutive cases of the PAM disease. So now this is absolutely very important, as far as the disease is concerned. And also we have discussed this. It is also famously called as the brain-eating amoeba. Of course, it doesn't actually mean that the amoeba directly goes and eats the brain, but it is in a way trying to affect the human brain, which is the reason why it has this particular weird name. But also we'll have to understand what this particular disease is all about, and what is the present scenario. So understanding the disease, we have to understand that this is caused by Naegleria fowleri, a particular single-celled organism, which is also a protozoa. And this is particularly found in warm fresh water bodies, and also in those areas where the water bodies are poorly maintained, especially the swimming pools and any particular area which has stagnant water. And also it is important to keep in mind that this can even reside in contaminated waters in and around the areas. And one of the reason, or one of the ways how it enters a human body is through the nose, right? Just imagine someone taking a swim in a contaminated pool, or let's say random waters where this particular amoeba exists, and the virus just enters through the human's nostril, the nose, and from the olfactory nerve it directly reaches the brain, and it causes infection there, right? So it travels to the brain and trigger a rapid and a fatal inflammatory response in the brain. And it is also important to keep in mind that this particular disease is extremely rare, but the efficacy of this particular disease in terms of taking lives, it is highly lethal, considering the mortality rate, which is almost 95 to 97%. As we discussed in the very first video, the very one person who survived this particular disease the last year, right? Not the last year, the very recently, he was exactly the 11th person worldwide to have survived from this particular disease. So now you can understand how deadly this particular disease is. So it primarily affects children and the young people, the young generations, and who are active individuals who are more likely to engage in swimming or diving activities. So this is a brief understanding about the disease. It is important to keep in mind that it is caused by the Naegleria fowleri, a kind of a single-celled organism, which is a family of protozoa. And this particular amoeba resides in fresh warm water bodies, warm freshwater bodies, and which are poorly maintained, right? Especially the swimming pools and any kind of a puddle which is stagnant. This is the breeding ground of this particular organism, the disease. And also it is important to keep in mind that the primary contact of this particular amoeba happens through the nose. It travels through the nose all the way to the brain, creating a very deadly and a fatal inflammatory response in the brain. And this is also important to keep in mind that this is one of the most highly lethal diseases around the world, having a mortality rate of around 95%, right? So moving forward, we'll also understand, we'll have to distinguish between another disease, which is the granulomatous amoebic encephalitis, which is completely different to the PAM that we are right now studying, because this particular GAE, granulomatous amoebic encephalitis, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correct, but for understanding it is GAE. It is a different form of brain infection caused by a different organism. It is Acanthamoeba or Balamuthia mandrillaris, right? On the other hand, PAM. This is caused by what? Naegleria fowleri. So these are the two different distinction with respect to these two diseases. But one common thing is it both affects the brain itself, but also in terms of how it affects the PAM that we are discussing, the brain-eating amoeba. It progresses very rapidly and can claim lives within days. And within days here we are talking about 14 to 18 days. So that is all the incubation period. And even when we're talking about the symptoms are not grave, very minor, simple symptoms, and just within 14 to 18 days even it can take the lives of that particular person whosoever is affected. But on the other hand, the GAE develops more slowly and it gradually proceeds, but it is equally dangerous if untreated, right? So GAE, the gestation period or the incubation period, is quite higher as compared to the PAM, which however is to keep in mind that both of these diseases although affects the brain. Now coming to the symptoms and risks. Early symptoms include your normal, it mimics your normal routine illness, like you will face normal headaches, there will be sore throat, fever, nausea, and in severe cases, once it kind of goes over a period of time, then you can also see some of the major symptoms like seizures, and also a person will even start getting hallucinations and leaving a very little time for effective intervention. So this is about the symptoms and the risk. Now talking about the treatment, right? So there is no one particular treatment for this particular disease as of now, but also talking about how efficient the efficacy of the treatment. It is always about the swift and the early diagnosis and the administrative the specific anti-amoebic drug that the hospitals or the healthcare officials administer to the person, which may sometimes help, right? But successful recovery is extremely rare. So one thing to understand from this particular information, that prevention is better than cure. What we have known holds really good in this particular disease, right? Because there doesn't exist any particular drug as of now, but a specific anti-amoebic drug, if administered at the right time as early as possible, the chances are that the patient may survive. Of course, as I said, the 11th person ever to survive the disease was from India, and he was the only person, the first person in India who survived was also the 11th person worldwide, right? So now you can understand how deadly this is. So there doesn't exist a particular treatment methodology. So however, it is the absolute and concentrated preventive approaches that one must follow in order to make sure that they don't get contacted by this amoeba. So now, what are the preventive approaches? It's very self-explanatory in nature, since it majorly transmits through water bodies, especially unmaintained swimming pools, spas, and all the water system areas. So whosoever goes or has this habit of taking a swim, or going to an untreated or let's say random pool or a pond or a lake, must be very careful, because chances are that the pool might have been, the water body might have been contaminated, and avoiding water related activities in stagnant or unmonitored fresh water bodies. And also one important thing to keep in mind, that one of the measure is chlorination. So chlorination can be done for all the water bodies. So still there are chances that the water might get contaminated. So another best preventive measure is to avoid submersion when swimming in certain water sources, when you are not sure as to what the water, the kind of water, if it is maintained or not maintained. It is rather better to use a nose clip or to avoid submersion. Of course, this sounds very kind of vague, talking about all this prevention, because prevention, if I would, if you ask me if the disease is as deadly as this one, I would prefer that you better don't even go for swimming at all. Probably you can just stay away from swimming until the situation gets comfortable. You better prefer taking bath at your own home, or probably you can schedule the swimming routine of yours, ultimately to ensure that you live another day to probably think of swimming maybe in the future. So that is the prevention, one and only prevention that I think would be sufficient. Anyway, moving on. What is Kerala right now doing for this? On a positive note, Kerala has recently, strengthened its healthcare system, especially the state public health laboratory now has been performing, exceptionally well. They are undertaking a lot of molecular diagnostics for almost 5 different species of amoeba, which are toxic, which are poisonous to humans, so that ready anti-amoebic drugs can be manufactured or produced in order to ensure that a drug of some sort is developed to this particular disease, right? And this advancement allows faster confirmation and better data for public health interventions. Of course, the government is trying its best, but it's all up to the people in order to make sure that this particular disease doesn't get transmitted. And one important key thing to keep in mind, another advantage of this particular disease, that we can curtail it, end it, because it is not a communicable disease, right? It is a non-communicable. It doesn't communicate, or I say it doesn't get transmitted from one human to another human, which makes it highly possible that you can actually curtail this particular disease then and there, but only through behavioral changes of the people in and around, right? Well, that is all for this particular video. Even before we end this video, we will just solve one prelims question from this particular topic. So the question goes, with reference to primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, consider the following statements. It is caused by free living amoeba found in contaminated water. Second statement, Kerala now has in-state molecular diagnostic facilities for confirmatory testing of this disease. Third one, the disease is always transmitted from human to human. So these are the options. Please use the comment section to leave the answer below. So for more such informative content, please do subscribe Believers IAS YouTube channel. Signing off, this is Madan Gopal. Have a beautiful day.